to Core 90 training with eXp Realty and the community. So very excited you guys are here and we've got a great day planned. I will tell you, we are doing something so much fun right now, and we've been doing this for a number of weeks, which is we've been running through the anatomy of a real estate transaction. And for those of you who've never really thought about this, it's breaking down what are all the essential parts. And we realize sometimes we talk so high level, how to do 1,000 transactions, how to be amazing and all that kind of stuff. But when we skip over the micro, it's like not understanding how to tie your shoes before you go on a marathon run, right? So we got to get down to the basics. And what we know to be true is many of the top producers in the whole world really focus on the fundamentals because it's what separates from the pack. And so I'm so excited. And today we've got one of our very top trainers, coaches, and leaders here inside the community, Christine.Kites, joining us. And Christine, I'm going to bring you up here on stage, and maybe you can give us a little bit of context. Today, we're talking about closing, but we don't mean closing like Zig Ziglar, like talking about closing the sale. We're talking about the actual closing process inside of a transaction, right?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jeff. Yes, I'm so glad to have the anatomy of the transaction because it does break down all the nuts and bolts of every little piece that as we become agents year over year, we kind of just know what we're doing. Oh, that's the next step. But do we really like break down? If we had to sit down and say, this is what you do next. And if somebody said, oh, it's going to be closing. And then you go, oh, that's right. Okay, this is what we do. This is what, and it's all just in our brains. We don't have it written down anywhere. And we think it's just a few things we're doing. And then when we really write it down, we realize there's a lot of pieces that we're doing every single time to make sure that we successfully get our buyers and sellers to the closing table, to a successful transaction, and their lives change. So yes, the anatomy of transaction has been fundamental to go through. Been excited to be a part of the listing and sale piece of this with the buyer and the seller, meeting with them, talking about getting in relationship with them, getting into the actual transaction with them, listing the home, getting an accepted offer, a buyer going out and showing property, getting under transaction, going through the inspection and the repair process, negotiations, how that whole piece looks, and then also working through the appraisal and the condition and value of the home, which we had a wonderful guest speaker on that last one. And so today we are now through all of those pieces and processes, and we're heading down the line towards closing. So that's where we're at, is we're heading to close. We're going to be at closing and post-close so that we can bring all of this together.
I love it. Well, and you've got a great panel brought together today. And this is one of the other things that we've been doing is really bringing top level players, top producers, right? People who are 1%ers in to talk about their experience with this part of the process so that we can start high level, right? Like 30, 60, 90,000 foot view. Here's what it is, right? It's your first day in real estate. You just got off the boat. Here's what you do. But also as we get down into the, let's call it into the weeds, to really look at the details and how do masters really prove their mettle, right? How do you navigate this in a way that's not just correct, but elegant? And I think that that's going to be part of today. So let me get out of the way. Why don't you introduce your guests and let's get rocking and rolling.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Jeff. Yes, we do have an amazing panel today with a tremendous amount of experience. Thank you so much for being here, panel and agents who are here on the anatomy of the transaction. We've got a lot of content and information to provide you today. First, I'd like to introduce Nancy Cruz here in the Willamette Valley, Oregon, who has been in real estate for 34 years and going strong, been a top producer and prides herself on working by referral. So she has been working with the Buffini and Company for years. And so she's a very relational agent. And so she has definitely a step-by-step process that she's going to help guide us with today in every step that we're going through about how she keeps in relationship and keeps things flowing all the way through transaction. Thanks, Nancy, for being here. We can't hear you. There you go.
Okay, I was muted. Sorry. Good morning, everyone. I'm excited to be here. This will be a great panel. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. My next panelist is Casey Malin. 19 years in the industry, joined in 2005 here at eXp Realty. She originally was also in title and escrow prior to, and you may or may not know, she's actually my sister and associate on the broker duo team. So she is a buyer exclusive agent. And so we love to hear that piece of it too. A lot of us are juggling both listing and sales. She is exclusively working with buyers. So she's got her niche of how to make her buyer experience the best. So thanks, Casey, for being here.
Yes, thank you for having me.
And our next panelist is Derek Roser. He is with eXp. He's a 3-time icon here at eXp, 6 years in the business. Prior to that, he had 30 years of construction and restoration prior to entering real estate, and he averages about 50 to 70 transactions a year. Thanks for being here, Derek.
I'm happy to be here. Happy to help however I can. Yeah.
And our last panelist is actually an escrow officer. So we have Robin Sullivan with Tycor Title here today. She's also been in the industry for 34 years, working with a lot of agents in the Willamette Valley, in Eugene, I'm sure Portland, and everywhere. She works across the state. And so we're happy to have her here to also lend her expertise of what that looks like behind the scenes and at the closing table for us as agents. So thank you, Robin, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
So that is our panel for today. Please make sure to put some questions in the chat box. I'll try to watch those. Jeff can help me with that as we go through. But we're excited to get things started. So we are, like I said, all the way through the transaction piece through appraisal. And yay, we've met value, or we negotiated that value. Condition is ready. We are finally ready to head towards the closing table. So let's talk about that piece. That now is over. Phew, we're done with that and we're moving forward. So agents on the panel here, that's now finished. What is our next step that we're usually looking at here as far as, you know, obviously our next step is getting out of that underwriting piece so that we can get our CDs and loan docs to title. So where is your communication now with your lender at this point in the game of getting towards closing? Nancy?
How about if you ask Casey that, since I do, please.
Well,
the
idea with this is, what communication are you actually seeing as a listing agent, usually from your buyers at this point? What does that look like for you?
Okay, so I'm communicating mostly with the selling agent to find out if they know when docs are going to be in. And a lot of times we've got great lenders that are communicating and telling us that too, but sometimes you don't. So just trying to establish when the docs are going to be there, or if I haven't heard from them, I'll be talking with title to find that out. And one of the things that that I actually insist on is to, and Robin knows this, is to schedule my own appointment. So they let me know when they want to sign, and I schedule, because like Derek was saying on our call earlier, that the title went ahead and scheduled something while he was on this call. But you know, they can handle it. They're great. But I like to be there. I just think it's part of the service that we provide. So is that what you were looking for?
Yeah, that's perfect. Okay. And that's what we're at right now, is we need to work on, and it seems like simple little pieces here, but this is a big piece, is the scheduling, communication, have the CDs gone out. We all know that there's a 3 business day timeline. You're with the sellers, and so the sellers can sign pretty much any time between now and closing. And when I'm talking with Robin earlier, she did mention that the sooner the seller gets in, the better. To sign. It's one less piece that's there. So Casey, where is it for you right now when you've got appraisals complete and you are now working with your clients, communicating with the lender? How does that look?
Yeah, so generally what I do is just find out when the CD is signed by the buyers, and then that usually gives me a good 3-day window. I usually contact the title company to find out, just a pencil in if it's going to be a morning or afternoon. I already know what my buyer schedules are. I communicate with the lender to let them know, hey, it looks like I'm scheduling the appointment for them. And then I start, just kind of penciling in the appointment until we can narrow down the exact time.
Good plan. Looking ahead, calendaring things. That's perfect piece that you've added to this is knowing what's on your calendar and when to plan ahead for that closing timeline. And I'm guessing at this point too, Casey, you've reached out to your client to also look at what their schedules naturally look like at this point.
Yeah, so usually looking at their schedule, I'm already preparing them when the CD is signed. I've already been, letting them know about like what the next steps are, communicating with them. Are they available in the morning? Are they available in the afternoon? And just finalizing. I mean, there's so much that really needs to go into it, making sure that like they have the utility list, and I communicate with the agent as far as like how I'm going to get keys. If there's documents in, communicating with the lender to make sure that if there's documents that the seller may need to sign, and then just communicating that with the other agent, communicating with the agent as far as, when we're going to get keys, how I'm going to pick up keys. I know I'm probably going to jump up to the next steps, to the next question that you have, but that's generally just communicating with the buyers, the lender, and the title company, and just narrowing down, getting the exact time.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So Derek, how is that looking for you right now when you're looking at doing this with your clients? The other piece of this could be that I'd like to point out and bring here is when you're working with buyers and sellers, like Derek does, I'm sure that there's been some times when you're actually working with a buyer and a seller in the sense that they are purchasing a replacement property and they're selling a home, and there's a little bit of a domino that might be happening here. So we can also bring that into this discussion as far as preparing those, making all of things work seamlessly here with those appointments.
Yeah, I mean, Nancy pointed something out really critical, and before we started this appointment, irony of all ironies, Christine, you and I talked about my dedication to being at every signing, and here I am in an appointment or in a meeting about being there, and I can't be there. So anyway, I have a great escrow officer. She's going to take care of things, but the process is really, I just reviewing that closing statement ahead of time. Really just getting down and dirty and into the nitty gritty of what the buyer or seller is going to be signing at the closing table, and making sure that there's no surprises when we're sitting there. That's my biggest focus is no surprises at the closing table. Making sure there's no judgments that we haven't addressed, that the loan is already ready to go. That's being there for them as their moral support.
Well, thank you, Derek. And you did bring up a great point. So the next thing also is that CDs are out. We're looking at that communication. We're trying to get those loan docs to title. And so then we're seeing a settlement statement come over our email from our escrow officer. And so at this point, we're also reviewing it. And what are we looking at when we're reviewing that, Nancy?
Oh, we're looking to make sure that the commission's right. We're looking to make sure that if there's a home protection plan, that it's on it, that if there were repairs on the seller side, that the bills are there. Just making sure that everything's in order, so that you're not sitting at the table saying, oh, where's that home protection plan in here? So, yeah.
Right. So in reviewing,
if there's like an occupy after closing agreement, if there are deposits that are there, I mean, all sorts of things that that could have been overlooked by escrow, just not either necessarily getting all the paperwork, or sometimes the paperwork does not make it all the way to escrow. So Shouldn't be catching it at the closing table, but it's happened.
Right. So before closing table, we're trying to catch what we can catch right now, which is on that settlement statement. Nancy,
Yeah.
you're a listing agent, so you're going to be seeing that side of it. But Casey, as a buyer's agent, there's some things you don't necessarily see because you're working with the buyer that Nancy brought up. She's looking at specific things the seller is paying for that are going to be on their statement. And you don't necessarily know that their statement looks, you're hoping that it is accurate and correct. So when you're going to close and you're looking at that settlement statement for the buyer, you're looking at the things related to the buyer, but you're also looking at any missing pieces, like you two brought up, is any missing paperwork, any signatures that they're not done on some paperwork. We're looking at home warranty, confirming maybe you're sending in a copy of that home warranty, confirming that it was in and on the seller statement for payment if they were paying for it. Any final invoices, those types of things. Anything else there, Casey, that I'm missing?
Yeah, so looking at the estimated statement and just looking at the amount of money for the buyers to bring in to close, explaining to the buyers of, when it's due, go to the bank to get a cashier's check, bring your ID to the closing table, and finalizing the closing statement. Most buyers are like, oh, how do I get the money, or what do I do? And can I just bring a check? So just communicating with them of like what the process looks like and how they need to get that done, the day before, or, maybe a wire the wire the day before, but definitely preparing them with the amount, making sure that the buyers are aware that they know that the amount to bring in.
Right. And that's a key piece to this whole closing table, right, is the money. And we all want to know how safe that is, that the money is getting there with all of the electronic funds safety that we put out there. So hand holding more than ever that process of how is the money getting there? And we're having that conversation with the client. How are you doing it? What are your options? What do you think you're going to do? Be ahead of the game before we're at the table with the final numbers. And so in your experience, who is delivering that final number to the client?
The escrow officers typically who is delivering that for me.
I have seen sometimes a lender and title company almost working simultaneously on that, where, sometimes it just depends upon the lender and their heavy involvement with that client and their communication, that they may be automatically part of their process is to tell them that number that they're anticipating and expecting. So I have seen sometimes hand holding with the lender on that too, where the title company is giving it, but I've heard that the lender has already told them also.
And on the seller side, of course, that's the most important. I mean, they want to know when they're going to get their money. And a lot of times they're very confused with, okay, I signed today, when do I get my money? And so I've explained that ahead of time to them most of the time. Sometimes they forget, and so one of the pieces that I talk to them about is if they need access to their money immediately after closing, I tell them that you'll want to do a wire and you'll want to bring your, a copy of your check or a copy of, the routing number and the account number if you want it to go into the bank, because when you get a big check, they'll hold it sometimes for 10 days and won't release it. So that's really a shock to people when they think they have access to their money and they don't. So the only difference with that is if the closing is on a Friday and it goes past the 2:30 cutoff, they don't get their money till Monday. So you make sure that they do understand that there could be a weekend hold on it. And So
yeah, I love that. And that's another one of those pieces that sometimes we forget to think about for them, is they're getting paid at closing when we're working with that seller, and they're going to want to know, where's the money and when am I getting it? How does it arrive? And giving them all the options and knowing all of the little hurdles they may have to jump over to get that money and their circumstances and situations.
Christine,
yes.
Christine, can I jump in there on what
Yes.
Nancy said? One thing that we have to check on when we set up that wire for them to get their funds is we ask where the name on that account. So let's say you have a trust, they're trustees of their trust selling. We cannot wire to an individual account. the seller, the vested owner, needs to have a bank account set up the way they are vested to have that money wired in. Just about it.
Thank you.
I just had that happen about last week. I just had that happen. Thank you for bringing that up, Robin.
So,
and on the buyer side too. So when the buyers think that they sign loan documents, then they get keys right then and there or the same day. And sometimes that's not necessarily the case. So communicating with the buyers as far as when we're giving keys, because signing and closing is different. So I explained that to the buyers as well.
Right. And so to backtrack to go forward, the loan docs, CDs, all of that, the CDs require 30 business days in order to sign. A Saturday is considered a business day, just making sure everybody knows that. And then they can sign those loan docs. Time is always of the essence to get those signed so that we can move forward to the actual recording and key delivery table. But before we're actually getting there also, I'd like to ask, is anyone doing any final walkthroughs on the property at this point? Nancy? Or do you see what's happening with your listings?
I see very few final walkthroughs. Most of the time, if the agent's going to do a final walkthrough, they put it in the contract, I've noticed. So I think final walkthroughs are important. I do, because you can, if the refrigerator was supposed to be left and they've taken it, you can ward off a problem right there before you actually close. So I think final walkthroughs are important, but I don't see a lot of them. I would say 30% of the time is all.
Mm-hmm. And you brought up a really good point about personal property. So I was also going to tailor that with that personal property piece. At this point, are you communicating with the opposite cooperating agent about reminding what is supposed to remain at the property and what doesn't stay? Or have you been doing that along the way at any point, just because of those circumstances of making sure that client does remember that X stays or goes?
Yeah. And usually when I talk to them about that, I'm also talking to them about how we're going to handle the keys. Because that's always a scrambling piece if you don't handle it ahead of time. So usually how I handle the keys is I'll put a contractor's box or the lockbox, and I'll ask the agent if they want to grab a key so that they would have it available for their buyer, once the contract says that they can have it. And if it records early, and the house is vacant, no problem, given the key early. And then I communicate with the seller that all the manuals, remotes, keys, especially mailbox key, because if they don't leave the mailbox key, the new buyer has to pay $45 or $50 to get a new key. So, and then I also ask them to leave it in a drawer in the kitchen. And I also, if there's like a keypad garage door opener, to leave the code and to leave the mailbox number so that they have it in a note.
Well, that's what makes you a top listing agent, is to tell all those points to a seller. However, Casey, Derek, I know that you work with both sides. Casey, you're a buyer's agent, so this looks a little bit different from you when you're trying to communicate about final walkthrough, what stays, making sure things were in there, and also the keys and communication on that. What does that look like for you?
I usually don't do a walkthrough with the buyers. I generally just communicate with the listing agent, like Nancy says. Is the key going to be in the lock boxes? Are they going to have it at the office? Is there a combo box? How and when can I get the keys when it does record? Generally, 99% of the agents know that I'm not going to give a code out if they're like, oh, here's the code to the combo box. Just don't give it until we record. I'm like, absolutely not. Sometimes I get the key ahead of time, and if it's vacant, then, this is when I get my opportunity to go in and kind of do a little tiny walkthrough and personalize the house with little things that I do on the end as far as the closing. If they're out of town, I'm filling the fridge with drinks, or I'm, getting toiletries or putting stuff on the counter for them, or just kind of putting their gift to bring at closing, and the second gift, I kind of just do a step ahead and prepare the house for them, knowing if they have kids and it's going to be a weekend and they worked all week. This is a a tough transaction or something, then I usually just kind of go above and beyond and fill the house with goodies and whatnot. But definitely making sure, talking with the agent, do they have a key? Do they have a garage remote? What's the mailbox number? And so it's really, really helpful at closing for being a buyer's agent.
Excellent. Derek?
Yeah, I'm doing both listings and buyers. You're backing up to the walkthrough. I would say, Nancy, you're generous at your 30%. I probably see 5% people do walkthroughs. I mean, it's
Very
not
few.
often. And as far as on the buyer side, I am more inclined to judge the situation and see how the repairs have gone and see if everything's, if the agent on the other side is on top of their game. Then I'm more apt to not do a walkthrough. If I feel that somebody is kind of loosey-goosey, I will absolutely go out and do a walkthrough, whether it's in the contract or not. I think it doesn't really, to me, it doesn't matter. It's me representing my buyer clients, making sure that the repairs were done. Even as we've had re-inspections done right up at the, a day or two before closing, and going back out and the re-inspection by the inspector missed some things, and I had to communicate immediately with the listing agent, say, there's a dumpster full of garbage left here. You need to get it out, or we need to find a provision so we take care of it on the back end, so we can close on time and not get out of the buyer's loan lock. Or there's all sorts of things that you have to deal with. But after the last transaction I went through, I'm going to probably more often do walkthroughs for my buyers just because of the trash that was left behind. So little things like that, I think, are super important. That's us representing our clients.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and I've had that discussion with a principal broker with regards to those walkthroughs, and they highly recommend that those walkthroughs are actually performed with our clients, so that the liability does not run on you, that you possibly have missed something through that walkthrough. So I do want to state that if you are going to be doing walkthroughs, encourage you to do them with your client and coordinate that together with them so that they feel that they have personally seen that they are accepting and liking the property, and it's not just you saying everything was fine. Just a risk management piece there. So we're moving towards the closing table. Loan docs are now on their way. You guys have communicated with everybody. The title company, now you're about to set that appointment, and maybe you're having a little bit more conversation with them about your clients prior to the table. Is there any additional communication that you're doing with the escrow officer prior to the signing appointment?
I always call the escrow officer and let them know the personality style. If maybe it was a difficult transaction, we're doing an extension of closing, that or just calling and saying, they are living in a hotel, they have their dog with them. Is that okay if they bring in the dog at closing? Or, hey, this one's just a really smooth transaction, or it's a stressful one, or I just really try to communicate with the escrow officer, just so they're prepared, or let them know, one Mr. Seller or one Mr. Buyer, he's a talker. He'll be in there forever, or just kind of focus on, I just let the escrow officer know if in the event it's going to be a lengthy one, or kind of just get to the point. And so I always call and let them know if there's going to be a challenge if needed.
Excellent. And I know that's very welcomed by Robin. We had that conversation earlier about that too. Having any heads up with who is going to be coming to the table and who else will be with them at that closing table, and to be more prepared for that appointment is very, very helpful. And you having that communication with your client, setting up that appointment, is allowing you to know, okay, who's going to be with you, what's the circumstances, all those kinds of things, and taking the sensitivities to heart of preparing that appointment to make that a nice, smooth appointment for them. So we're finalizing and preparing some gifts at this point, I'm guessing also.
Yeah, I always bring coffee and donuts to the title company, and in addition, bringing the gift for the client, but just making um, the signing more comfortable, and just having everybody involved, and having everything comfortable at the closing table.
And so I think the last thing that we did not touch on there as we're moving to the actual closing table is a final contingency addendum. Is everybody utilizing those, and what does that look like for you? Nancy?
I do. Yeah, I do. I have a standard one that I've used for years, and usually what I do is I will send it to escrow to be signed at closing, but I send it to the other agent first so that they can review it and know that it's there. I've only had just a few times that they've refused not to sign it, but it's a contingency release that I really like, and so yeah, I send it to title. I think it'd be great if you don't care to hear from Robin, like what would she like from us as agent on the title side?
I am getting to that.
Okay, cool.
We are going to get to Robin at the tail end of seeing her behind the scenes, and also her experience with us agents at the table, and any tips that she can offer us. So I have that coming for us.
Awesome.
And so, Derek, did you have anything on that contingency addendum that you wanted to mention?
Not really. I need more risk management for sure in my business, and having that in place on every transaction is, I'm sure, I mean, Nancy, that's great. I do default to my transaction coordinator a lot, and a lot of that is handled and just automatic. So I guess that's my answer on that.
Well, that's great though, Derek, because you've also touched in on the systems of a transaction right there, that you can also have all of these things just automatically in a system format so that things aren't missed through these pieces. It seems like everything's fine and done and we're just going to go sign at closing, but there are some more pieces there that we have to attend to before we get to the closing table, and remembering all those key pieces and having them in a systematic way allows it to be smoother for your client all the way through the closing table. So as we move down to closing day, so we are now approaching the title company. We've got the appointment set and we're walking in. How does that look for you, Nancy?
You mean, okay. So, yeah, we walk in and a lot of times my clients are there, waiting for me, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes I get there earlier. And so anyway, we usually if the title person is busy finishing something up, we're in the waiting room. She comes and gets us and takes us to the place to sign. And I always know that she wants the couple to sit on the other side together so that it can be easier for signatures. And then we sit on the other side of the table. Of course, I think it's great that Casey brings coffee and donuts. I never thought about doing that to the closing table. That's a great idea. I've never done that. With buyers, I'll have a gift of some sort. It'll be a basket, or, with just filled with things, or I try to listen to them throughout the course of the conversation to what they really love and really enjoy, and try to adapt it toward them. And then, with sellers, sometimes it's difficult, I think. So I feel like one of the things I've done is these garden sign things, I've given them garden signs where, as a part of the gift, where they have the little flags, for each of the holidays. So I'll give them a garden sign with like 4 or 5 of the little flags to go throughout the year for, spring, summer, Easter, fall, Christmas. Anyway, to take with them, because I've had a lot of sellers moving out of state. Half of my listings last year moved out of state. So anyway.
Right. And you're just trying to make the experience feel special. And so I've also heard, working with sellers, like you said, it's hard to give a gift when somebody's trying to move, and you don't want to give them one more thing to pack and go with.
To take care
so it's not usually that gift card, and you always feel like it's so impersonal or something because it's gift card, but it's actually very special and personal because they're like, oh, good, I haven't had a night out to eat, because we've been packing and been at the house, and this is a nice relief to be able to go out to dinner. So just know that any gift that you give is special and received very well, and don't think too hard on that. You think it's impersonal, and in situations like you're saying, sellers are moving. They're not staying where they're at, and they may be moving out of state, and it doesn't mean they're moving to that next house right away. So love that. Casey? Closing people, you're arriving with your donuts and coffee. And
I'm just meeting and greeting them, asking them if they, need to use the restroom beforehand, if they've traveled a ways to get there. Just communicating with the escrow officer, as Nancy mentioned, we're in the waiting room or we have a table ready, having them sit, we already know, Robin's here and the signers are in front. So we kind of come in and sit where we need to. So it's, convenient for them. Making sure I have the lender on call if I have any questions. That's another thing too. So I kind of set up my iPad and let the, text the lender, hey, we're here, or let you know if I have any questions, if they're not present. And just kind of prepare the table and just, see if they have any questions. And Robin comes in and just kind of does her magic and, just kind of sit back and listen and just stay in contact with the lender. And I'm just there for support. And, we're with the buyers through the whole transaction, being at the tail end and letting them know that they're so important and that this is their, their home that they're purchasing, and it's a big purchase. So, I'm there at every closing. If 99%, and just like Derek, I'm
Me too.
present. So setting up the table and making sure everybody's comfortable. And
I love that. I'm hearing everything about the experience piece here. And now, Nancy, on the seller side of things, you're about a 20-minute or less appointment. Casey, on those buyer sides, and Derek knows this too, you're looking at anywhere from 40 minutes to an hour, depending on how things go there. Derek, how is things looking for you as you're approaching that table and that appointment?
The buyer signings are my favorite because it's a celebration. It's emotional.
It is.
And, not that my seller sides aren't important. It's just they're quick. So,
They are.
but there's, I try and get there, meet with them, feel their anxiety level, feel their excitement, whatever it is that they're feeling before we go into the signing, and just kind of adjust based on, how much emotional support they might need, if any. And if it's just, hey, they're pretty pragmatic, they just come in, they're ready to sign and all excited, then we just get it done. If they want to talk a lot, I'll listen, and hopefully, I have a couple of great escrow officers that can really kind of do the same thing. So, so we engage them fairly quickly on their, emotional state, and then work through it. And then, at the end, it's a celebration. So I'm not a gift giver. My support is what I try to give as my gift. So that's a little different. I do a buyer closing gift, and usually either leave it at the house so they can go in on their own and enjoy it without me bothering them when they're doing their initial exciting walkthrough. So
I love this. So we're definitely all relational here. This is a customer service industry. Selling homes is a buyer and seller experience. And all of you are talking about the experience, the customer service piece here, and that you've had a relationship for not just a few weeks, not even 30 days. You've likely been in relationship for 6 months plus years in some cases. And so this piece of showing up to the table and being a part of the finality of this whole process, you're all there. I know there's some agents say, oh, I never go to the closing table. And there's agents like these three here on this panel are saying they wouldn't miss it unless they really couldn't be there, like Derek can't at the current moment. So this is one key thing to take away if you've been on the fence of and been hearing one or the other way of to be there or not be there. I know in personal experience, like Derek was mentioning, the emotions that are displayed at that table are usually unexpected. You think everybody's doing just fine. And a seller is, finally saying, well, that's been my home, and all of a sudden the emotion shows up, or it's the buyer purchase, a single lady at the table, which I recently had, who's just tearing up and just, with her, she's a single mom with her kids, and she's thanking, us profusely of being there for us, and so glad that she was, found us. This is an emotional experience for people. You have to put yourself in the shoes of buying and selling a home and know that there's been a lot of emotions through the way, and to be there at the tail end for the hugs and the tears and the happy tears and those kinds of things, it solidifies that full relationship with the person. I've seen nothing but great things that come about being present at those moments of, was it worth my time to be there or not? You make that decision, you make that call, whether or not that's you feel that was worth your time to be there for your people. So we're all done, and they've signed. Everybody's happy. They've got their gift now. They've had it at the house because you've maybe set it up there before or thereafter. At this point, are any of you focused on any point of testimonial or pictures or anything like that that's going on right here also as an opportunity for being here with them? Nancy? Or Derek? Sorry.
Sorry. This is
No.
the great part, because this is where, that's as big of a reward to me as the paycheck is, hey guys, if I've done a great job for you, I'm going to send you a link to do a Google review. Would you please, this is how I get my business. Could you please give me a review? And, usually I do that within a day of closing. And so they have the opportunity to be really still excited about things and, really say nice things. So that's the opportunity really right there.
It is.
And I know other people will say, do you have any referrals for me? I think that comes with their satisfaction. I don't know that you have to ask. Some people will probably disagree with me. I don't ask. I think that's a little over the top for me. So anyway.
Testimonials. I love that. And a 5-star review, please. Right?
Right.
Nancy, is that pretty much where you're at?
I
too?
always ask. I've got to admit that I'm tech challenged, so I have to figure out how to send the link to them because they're always willing to, but it's the truth. But it's a great time to take pictures too for social media. I know the title companies have these things that they can hold up, they've all got them there. And they're usually the buyers are usually really happy, and the sellers are usually either or, so yeah.
And they're there, and they have a different variety of signage, right? It's like I've actually seen one best customer ever, which I think is really great, because who doesn't want to lift that up and be like, yes, I've been the best customer ever, opposed to she's awesome and he's awesome as I'm awesome. So everybody's awesome, and you get to have fun with taking photos, photo op, right? Casey, how about you?
Yeah, this is where my photography skills come in handy. And I tell them, okay, stand over here, move here. Which one do you want to hold? Do it this way, do this way, take pictures of the family. Just so, and then I send them all to them, and they absolutely love it, because, they're just as excited as we are too, for having them buy their home.
Excellent. So signing's done and over. Is everything done? No, not yet. Okay, so
Robin's turn.
We're not even there yet. So we walked out the door, and now there's more in our minds, and we know we've got more steps here ahead of us. We've obviously told them about utilities. We've told them about their home insurance. We've told them about all these different things in that closing table, all the pieces that we didn't talk about here, because usually Robin's going through all of those things in her list of things, but maybe we're taking some key notes while we were in there of follow-ups to do, because we're like, oh, that's right, I need to remind them to do this, to do that, follow up with them about this, that, and the other, do that final walkthrough, whatever that piece is, go over to the house, get the key situated. So now, and depending upon if they are getting possession day of, or if it's a timing of possession, and if we have a domino going on. So we're still not done, and we're not even recorded. So now we walk out the door. What are those things now that we're working on organizing and getting ready to do and go, Nancy?
Well, with the sellers, of course, usually they'll know when they're going to get their money for sure. Sometimes if we don't know for sure when we leave, when it's going to actually record, I will be in touch with you as soon as I hear that it's recorded and the money's available, so that I can communicate that with them. Remind them again about where they're going to leave the keys, and just go over that. I've talked to them about it before, but I just remind them. And then, yeah, that's just trying to kind of wrap things up, mainly with the seller side. On the buyer side, though, for me, I talk about something different. Like last year, I sold 2 buyers out of the deals that I did last year. Most of them were listings, but I offered this to most all of my buyers, depending, and it's really kind of a fun thing. I offer them an open house when they're ready after closing. And I've done maybe 5 or 6 of them. It's funny, people don't take you up on it, but it's one of the funnest parties that you can have. You tell them, all I need from you is your list of names and addresses or emails of the people that you want to invite, and we will have an open house party. They can either I've done summer barbecues, I've done just an afternoon window from 2 to 4 for dessert. I've done all kinds of things. And what you get to do is you get to meet all their friends and family, and it's a great, it's fun. It's fun, and you get business from it.
That's awesome.
And the people love it.
That's awesome.
So, anyway, yeah.
Derek, have you done anything like that?
Oh, I just wrote that note down. That's awesome. Oh, that's a great idea, a great twist.
It's really fun.
Yeah. No, I mean, honestly, it's me. It's after when we're recorded. Well, obviously we have a time frame between signing and recording, and there are things that can happen.
That's true.
Your seller, you still got to wait for the buyer's loan to fund and maybe some conditions to be met. So, if you're signing 2 or 3 days ahead of time, case in point, I had one fall apart. We had to switch lenders and postpone closing for 2 weeks. So, after the seller signed, they're expecting their money 2 days later, and we're looking at 2.5 weeks later now. So just reminding them that, hey, we're 99.9% there, but there is that small chance that something could happen. So they're not completely surprised if there's a delay or something does come up. Just prepare so they don't kill you. Yes.
Prepare and give all the options of what is happening and what could potentially still happen.
Yeah. And then, as far as the key transfer, I'm a proponent of just leaving my lockbox on the door and having the when it's a listing, having the buyer's agent take it out of the lockbox, and then I'll go pick my lockbox up. It's secure, it's there, and there's and I do the same with my buyers. As I ask the listing agent, please just leave your lockbox there and come pick it up after I've removed the key. So it's just secure. There's no there's no worries. The key's always been there. Leave the key there. So.
Well, and that's very helpful too, because a code can be given to a client at that point. And if there is a situation of timing of when they'd like to get over there to start that move-in process, it's not a coordination of your time always to be present for that key delivery, making it easy and accessible to them. So, so we've got recording happening. We've got moving day. We've got a planned party for the clients. We've got keys. We've got occupancy. And so at this point, we are obviously wanting to continue a relationship so that we are not breaking up with anybody. Right?
Yeah.
So we're not going to go into major post-close because we're going to do that next week on the next Anatomy of Transaction. But the initial first few days to the first 30 days to make sure that we are still in relationship with that client. Is there anything else that is now set up for that 30 days or less time period with a client that you currently do on a regular basis?
Mine's
go ahead,
typically
Derek.
an email with a link for a Google review. You know, just and a hey, how's things going? I'm here for you. If you need any resources, I'm here. Here's the link for the Google review. So that's within a day or so.
Okay.
And Nancy, you had talked about the tech side of that.
Yes.
The doing the link, being techie. One thing that we do, you can actually have like a business size card done up with that link on there with the like a QR code.
Okay, got it. Yeah.
So you can have those printed up if you're not techie to be able to do that. And you could give them to that at closing, or you could do a thank you afterwards with that code on that business size card so that
that's a good idea.
Do that. And because I have trouble with tech too.
That's a great tip. Everyone is a QR code for that Google review or wherever that testimonial is coming into. Just put it on a link, put it on a QR code. You could have it on a card to hand over. You could have it on some type of an email form, different ways that you can get it so that it's easy and you don't have to try to figure it out every time and find that link every time. It's just automatically there. I think I've seen that in the title companies where they have a thing on their desk where it's like, provide us a review. They have it on a flyer there. So it can be figure it out the one time and then it's done and you hand it off to everybody. So how
you
about
could put that in? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but no, in finishing up, I'll send if it's a buyer, I'll send them a card, welcome to your new home. That'd be a great place to put that card in too. And to the seller, I'll send a thank you note. I like to try to check in with either buyer or seller. I like to make 3 contacts, either with a telephone call, or an email or text or something after closing, just, and then I have a post-closing system kind of thing where
from there. But in that first 30 days, we're weaning off communication. We've been in contact with them every day, multiple times a day, all the way up till closing. So that first 30 days, I think, is key. The 3 touches is one way to do it. Other ways to do it. And part of that, am I also hearing from you, Nancy, is updating your systems. Yeah. Right? You're changing things in your system now. It's now closed. You have a contact management system. You're putting them on some type of a campaign, a drip system, something like that is now happening within that first few days of closing.
Yeah. Making sure that the addresses are changed and updated in the CRM.
Mm-hmm. DC, did you have any thoughts on all of the conversation we were doing on the post-close?
I usually just, text the clients or give them a call like the next day, like how is their move? How are they doing? They usually send pictures of with them and the kids in the house at the kitchen table or something like that. But yeah, just following up with them and just seeing like how their move is going. And then a week later, just to see, hey, how's everything going? You enjoying your new house? Or they're sending me pictures before I'm even sending them of like, how are you doing? I send a card to the listing agent also, like at closing or like following that too. I send a thank you card and, great to work with you. either drop off a bottle of wine or give them a gift card of like a coffee or something, just because working with everybody's involved in the transaction. And so just kind of keeping in the loop with the other agent on the other side as well.
Right. All of our partners who've been part of that transaction, there's always some key touches that we could do with all of them, our inspectors, our title, our lender partners, those kinds of things. And if you haven't already thought of doing that, maybe that's something you can implement into your systems from this meeting here today, is to put that a part of that step in your system. Step is to remember everybody a part of that transaction. Everybody played a role and a part, and we're so glad that they did, to get us all the way through to that end game, which is that closing table. So the other piece of this that I haven't, I know we're taking pictures, and that whole social media piece that we mentioned out there, are we mentioning anything to our clients about the production of that's going to happen, or display of that's going to happen on Facebook or any social media thing of, is it just done? Do you tag them? Are you already friends with them? Is there any piece of that you guys are doing with that?
I'm generally friends with most of my clients. Sorry, Derek. Yeah, I'm generally friends with most of my clients. So it's either I'm sending the pictures to them on Messenger and they're posting and saying something nice about me or about the experience, and then they put the pictures up and they thank you so much for all of your hard work, and we couldn't do this without you, and that sort of thing. So it's kind of like already started, and then we can follow up with like can you give us a 5-star review? And they're normally like, yes, absolutely, send us the link.
So that's great. That's one of the great ways of being able to get your clients involved in the process of what you're trying to accomplish here, which is the testimonials, and they love us. And so one of the key pieces here that Casey just said is send them pictures of what you've taken of them. Casey, you've also done pictures actually at the properties with them, with balloons and different things like that. And you've sent those pictures over to them. Everybody is so happy and excited to tell everybody about their move into their new home. And either they're doing it without you, or they can be doing it with you. So that's another key thing that you could probably implement, is how to keep you as the forefront of the excitement of this move into their new place, and how great it was, the experience of working with you.
Well, we had a sign made, and it was like, welcome to your home. So I'll go to the store and go get the balloons and go put the sign in front of the house if I'm putting the gift inside. And then I do a little video of like, welcome home, or, with the balloons. And then they usually, when they drive up, they just see the welcome home sign with the balloons and then their gift inside. So that's another thing that if I'm not bringing something to the closing table, that's just an addition to. And then I'll send the video to Chrissy, and then she does her magic.
Nice.
Magic, Canva magic,
Yeah.
Chat GPT magic, everything's magic. Wonderful. Nancy?
Can I just say one thing? That reminds me, you guys talking about taking photos, is I used to do this and haven't done it for a while, but with my buyers, you could actually do it with your sellers too. But I would do the postcards when I'd say either, we've moved, and then with their new address on the back of it. And then I would give them stamps and labels and all of that as part of their gift. And they would love that, because you always want to notify your friends that you've moved, what your new address is. So
excellent.
But I haven't done that in a while. That just reminded me of that. So
excellent. Write that down. Okay. Well, we have now made it through post-close, and what I'd like to do is now take and segue over to Robin's expertise in this whole process. Thank you, all three of you. Please chime in and participate here too with Robin, but Robin's had some great tips and information to provide all of us agents, because yes, we've made it to the closing table, but there's been a lot of things that have been happening along the way here. Starting with, we're going to go back real quick to it's opening escrow, because this actually starts with her right then. The escrow gets opened, and as agents, we don't understand sometimes all of this behind the scenes things that's happening at the title company while we're working with the inspection and the appraisal and the walkthroughs and the other things that are happening along the way. There's all this other stuff, these other layers that are happening to get us through to that successful transaction at the end. So Robin, opening escrow, you get an email says, yay, we've got a new transaction, please open escrow for. You and I talked about this, and it sounds like it doesn't happen very often. So I'm going to just ask you directly, what is it that you would need to or would prefer to see on that open escrow every time when you get that email?
The offer, any counteroffers, any addendums that get emailed into us to open escrow is wonderful. I have just a few agents that do then a separate email. What we need for both buyer and seller, we need their phone numbers for all parties. We need email addresses, and we need mailing addresses. There are times when either all or none of those are given. And so we have to then try really hard to gather that information. And sometimes it can take a few days. In order for us to send out to the client, being the buyer and seller, the opening packages, we must have cell numbers and email addresses, or we're delayed in getting that out to them.
So gathering the information in the opening escrow, I know that I had been taught years ago, and so it's just part of my process that when I send over all my sales documents within that email to you is also a form that says broker escrow instructions. And in that is everything that you just talked about. It's laying out buyer, seller, email, phone number. If I don't have the other parties because I'm the cooperating agent does, I mention see cooperating agent for those pieces that are in there. As a listing agent, I'm telling you, this is what I know to be true on the commissions that are being paid by the seller in this transaction. I'm saying what the earnest money is. I'm saying that if the intended closing date, what the prorations are being based on, either the closing date or a possession date. I'm breaking down the agent, who I am, who they are, and the full breakdown. It's all on one page, just a simple template that goes over to you so that you can have like a snapshot of what this transaction is, along with the intention of the commission demand that is in there, because those are also those numbers that you're looking for. Now, on the buyer side of things, and with the NAR and the new buyer agents agreements and those kinds of things, and I did ask you this before also, you were saying pretty much 100%, almost 99.9%, you are seeing the concessions addendum on every transaction.
Yes, we are consistently getting those when the transaction is being opened. And then, of course, we review, because it has the 3 different parts, and what the seller is going to be contributing. Yes.
And so now it's actually in our actual sales documents, clear as day, as far as what the concession might be being paid by the seller. However, the listing agent is still required to say, however, this is my piece that the seller is contributing towards that. And so within that one document, if you don't have a template of this, I did ask Robin if she had a template of this. I do too. If you're interested in one, just let us know and we can send you what these template looks like. But this is one of those key pieces. When I started this questionnaire with her about this is the most important key piece, is the gathering of information and knowing all the parties to the transaction so that she can actually get started in knowing what the commission demand was right off the gate.
Christine, can I ask, and maybe like the others can chime in, when you have that seller contribution addendum that shows what's being paid for buyer commission or any seller contributions to closing costs, when that's presented at the beginning, maybe there's a counter offer that changes that. Do you do a new seller contribution addendum or not? I've had it both ways.
And I think that's very true. I think that's the way it's happening right now, is that the addendum is making the adjustment because of the fact of some negotiations that have taken place. And so they're not making a brand new concessions addendum. What I have been seeing personally is just an addendum to that concessions addendum, or some type of counter, like somebody is saying there, a counter or an addendum.
And there are times when it can be confusing, depending on the timing of all of those documents. So again, going back to what you were talking about, the whole transaction summary, that really is important then to help us determine exactly what those concessions are.
Robin and Christine, this is, by the way, this information is so great today. And I love that agents are getting all this because it's going to clarify a lot of things. Robin, one of my favorite questions, and Christine, I hope you're okay with this, but I wanted to pepper it in. So Robin, what maybe 3 to 5 of the top mistakes that you see agents making from your opinion, or things that you wish that they knew coming into this process, that it seems like it's always fuzzy or seems to be a mistake that comes up? What are some, because this is your chance to impact. I mean, we've got a good number of people live. We're going to get a couple hundred more agents right away on the replay because that's how this works. And I'm just curious, as those agents are watching this, they're engaging in this process with title and escrow. I think a lot of times agents don't even know what escrow is. But, and I am an agent, so I can call us out on that. But I'm curious, what are the things that you really wish were more obvious or apparent, or that are recommendations from you?
In this year, 2024, one of my biggest challenges is the commission. It is not yet clear on all levels. So it doesn't matter if you're talking the buyer's agent, the seller's agent, the lender, escrow. There are many different documents that can come in that can adjust, change, and then what are we doing with commission? I literally signed one Monday that the lender misread the seller contribution addendum. Said 2.5% to the buyer's broker. The lender put 2.5% towards closing costs. It's huge. It's huge.
That's a massive difference.
Right? Yeah. So for us in 2024, commissions are huge. We must have specific instructions from both sides. What is your commission payment?
Yeah, it's an interesting point, Robin. Do you find that, and this is just anecdotal, but I'm curious, do you find that agents are or are not checking their commission demands, their closing disclosures, or is this like one of these things where if agents are showing up at the closing, they're going, wait, what? This is a mistake. How often is that a problem where it's getting in the way of a deal?
Well, I can only speak for what we do here at Typeboard. Sure. We try very, very hard when the transaction is open, like Christine was talking about, to either get the transaction summary or commission demands. And there are some agents that would prefer to wait to do commission demands. And unfortunately, that puts us in a very bad position with calculating numbers. So we ask upfront for commission demands. And then we try very hard to get the seller's closing statement. And Christine and I talked about this, getting the seller's closing statement, because sometimes you're signing the seller before documents, to get it to the agent so they can review the commission ahead of time. And there are many times in my email where I say, please review the commissions on this estimated statement. Yeah. So that it is not at the closing.
I think if reading your email was a law, a lot of agents might go to jail. So
well, and I think that the settlement statement, yes, it's reviewing those, but I do catch still very regularly where something can't, because they are doing so many moving parts on this back end and confusion of information that's coming through. It's those final invoices, that home warranty, did it get ordered? Is it actually on the statement? And are the commissions correct? And that whole statement alone being reviewed, it should be taken very seriously, to take a minute to review it, remember your transaction. Oh, shoot, did they pay that? They said they were going to pay it, but did they pay it? Well, let me go check if they paid it, because sometimes that's the case too, is that you find out, oh, shoot, I just figured I'd pay at closing. I was going to pay it, but I'm just going to pay it at closing. Well, did you have the invoice to make sure it's paid at closing? So following up with all of your service providers to make sure that they're getting paid correctly, and it's not after closing that you realize that some monies did not get allocated towards a payment to a furnace bill, whatever last thing that needed to be done at the property, and then who's paying for that now because it's gotten missed. So
when you're talking about all of those things on the statement to review, like I said, we're trying to get the seller statement out. On the opposite side, the buyer statement, and Casey may have seen this, we sometimes don't get loan documents until it's crunch time. And so we can't get you a buyer's closing statement time. And that's not that we don't want to, it's that we are pushed up against the time clock with the loan documents coming in way too late. So therefore, we can't get the buyer's statement out. So you can check the buyer's figures. Maybe there's an invoice the buyer's paid. Maybe there's a commission the buyer's paying. We just don't always have the time. Sometimes we get loan documents at 5 o'clock when they're coming in at 8:30 in the morning. Sometimes we get loan documents and they're literally sitting in the lobby. So
and that you would also mention to me that it was so important for the seller side, having them sign as early as they can because of that type of crunch that you're normally running into, getting the buyers signed. And when you're having to manage both the buyers and sellers getting signed in a hurry at the end is very difficult sometimes for you guys to make all of that happen. And so as listing agents or representing that seller, you stated to me, it is okay, get that seller in sooner than later to sign. If there's a couple of documents that still need to be signed after the loan package arrived, we'll all figure it out. But it's less than a whole 20-minute, a whole situation of the full documents that need to be signed at that point.
Yes. So because we're never 100% sure when those loan documents are coming in, and as we get closer to our date, we try to book our sellers and get them in and get them signed. I would say a good almost 75% of the time we're signing our sellers before loan documents, because there is not enough hours in our day to wait for loan documents and then get in a buyer and a seller.
And loan docs, you had mentioned to me, it's sometimes pulling teeth, to get getting all of that figured out, the final numbers figured out, the loan docs actually arriving. Like you said, you have people out in the waiting room ready to sign because the loan docs are arriving the night before or the morning of, and you're scrambling to make everything happen. And you had mentioned that the difference between a local lender opposed to an out-of-state or an online lender, the difference of that for you was the accessibility.
Yes. We oftentimes can work with a local lender. They know us, they know our style, they know the agents in the area, they know their style, they know how to keep things more timely and on track. So I could have a lender that I've worked with for several years may call me and say, I'm really sorry, we've run into this, we're trying to get it completed. You may get loan documents in the morning and it's a sign and fund. What is your schedule? And that's like golden for us, because then we can plan, we can talk to the agent, we can then talk to the buyer, and we can plan. An out-of-area lender will say, okay, we're trying really hard, we had this last condition, we're trying to get that done, you're going to get loan documents, you need to do sign and fund tomorrow. Oh, I booked. And so there's no pre-communication of how can we make this come together for the buyers and the sellers. It's like, just get it done with your out-of-area lenders.
And so, love that. And then we had talked about with our agent panel about attendance to these signings. And in your experience, you had mentioned to me that you usually generally see about 50-50.
Yes, that's what it's been. I appreciate all of the panel going to your signings. Thank you, and thank you. When an agent is at a signing, it gives just a great feeling, a great completion for us, completion for the customer to have their agent there. It is amazing. If nothing else, just to sit there and just say, I'm here for you. And that makes them relaxed and comfortable.
I love that. And so then the other piece of that is, how often do you see lenders in attendance?
Not very often. It goes back to what we were just talking about. A lot of the lenders are out of area, and so they can't come. Our local lenders, a lot of them try very hard to come. Again, it's another piece of relaxation that, okay, I'm going to sign these documents. And not that we can't answer questions, but this is the time for the lender to shine and help and be there as a support.
And so with the agents that are not usually in attendance, and we covered some of this because the agents on the panel were talking about doing all of these steps. But when an agent isn't present, there's usually general questions that arise in that conversation that you don't necessarily have full answers for. And you've mentioned that to me. Keys, possession, when is this, when is that, what about the, all of these different things that might come up that are helpful when an agent is present.
Yes. So you might have a last minute repair. Is that completed? When do we get to do our walkthrough? When do we get our keys? And these are questions that they're the little things at the very end that are important that they get answers to.
Yeah. And so the other piece that I wanted to bring up here that brings us back to the start of the escrow. We opened escrow, gave all the information and all of that. And the one piece that I just didn't want us to forget to talk about was the preliminary title report. The preliminary title report then is obviously sent out over email and is sent to all parties to the transaction. And so if I could bring everybody back into this conversation, when that preliminary title report shows up on your email, is there any particular process that you are doing with that, with your clients in communication at all when you see that come over? And are you reviewing it? Are you taking time for it? And Robin, I wanted to ask you what you're doing with that prelim when you see it come on your desk for your agents.
So we review the report to see some of the major points. Number one, who's our vested owner? Does our vested owner match our sales contract? You would be surprised how many times it does not. We look at legal description. We look at the exceptions. We look if there's any needs for the buyer side for possible judgments. So we review the report, and I just want to say, here, we encourage, if you have a messy report, messy property, if you have a seller who has, questions on what are their needs to do this, if you have a buyer that wants to go reasons, we will sit down with them way before closing. We want to sit down with them and go over these questions and answer them. You may have a seller that has maybe a payoff and 6 judgments. We got to talk about that. How are we going to make it through this? You may have a deceased, an estate, a trust, an LLC. And anytime we have people bring in their trust documents and we sit down and we get what we need, we may have a deceased seller. The list is endless, and we will always sit down with them and say, let's talk about what we need, how to get through this. We're here to help. Don't ever think we won't go over preliminary title report ahead of time, we will.
And so lean on your escrow officer for this. And that's one of the key pieces of making it through to the closing table so that they're signing docs and they're moving forward. And it's behind the scenes that's happening that we don't know is happening there. When Robin reviews what she just said, she does all of this review, we actually receive that email of review from her. We get the preliminary title report, here it is. And then behind that, within that day, I normally see an email from her saying, I reviewed the preliminary title report. This is what I found. This is what I see. This is what needs here. And she does a full review of it for you, utilizing that in a way to use that for working with your clients too, as far as forwarding that piece to them to make them feel like, I don't know what this thing is. Is the numbers right in there? What does this mean? The preliminary title report is one of those unknown documents that our clients, we've told them about that it's coming, but it's 8 pages long. They have no idea how to read it. They don't know what's on it. They're just like, sure, yeah, okay. I don't even know how to decipher it, so I guess I'm fine with it. So are you actually emailing this and having any conversation with your clients when the prelim comes over, Nancy?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. If I see judgments on it, a lot of times they'll, they will sometimes, sometimes they don't know it's there. They're surprised by it. And so, obviously that judgment's got to be taken care of before it can close. So I just instruct them to contact the title company and work through it. Robin, can I clarify a comment that you made? Are you saying that, like, I've oftentimes had people tell me, I'm in a program with the state and I owe back taxes, or I owe this or that and I don't know how much it is. Are you saying that you would review that before we even get to offer situation? I just want to make sure that
I have had agents reach out if they have concerns.
Okay.
Let's say you're working with someone that maybe has voiced to you that they are in a financial situation and they're not sure. If they have signed a listing agreement with you and you are the agent representing them and you call me and you have concerns over the possible messy prelim, we can do one prior to you getting a buyer.
Oh, okay. And is there an expense to that?
Only if it cancels and goes somewhere else.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. That's good to know, because I've had that situation many, at least a handful of times that we needed to know ahead of time if we could even sell the property.
That's
but I won't do it if they haven't listed with you.
Okay, that's perfect sense.
Because I don't want to take that information and then walk and waste your time and our time. They have to have signed a listing agreement. Okay,
thank you. I just wanted that clarified.
And so, for us to have a successful transaction, us agents, we are usually focused on that inspection, that appraisal, that walkthrough, all of these different elements. And we don't know that there's a possibility of something holding us up actually that has to do with the title, clearing title, and or our buyers being able to purchase because something shows up on their end. I've had that happen working with a seller where the buyer had something show up on their end and it delayed our closing by weeks. And, the seller was needing to move by a certain time, and it can be a delay and a situation that occurs there. So the more that you're on top of actually reviewing that prelim, knowing that it's actually looking pretty clean and clear, and then of course the CC&Rs that are in there and that you got those over to your clients for their review, made sure that they actually took time to look at those and they didn't have anything that come up that was a concern. Casey, I remember you had a situation where that prelim came over and the CC&Rs came through. It was a newer constructed area. The buyers went ahead and reviewed those CC&Rs, and do you recall what happened?
Well, if you're referring to, they couldn't have a pool in their backyard and they wanted to have a pool. So
that and the dogs.
No. Oh, and the dogs. Yes, that was another one. But I wanted to go back to what Robin said when she sends out the preliminary title report, that she's read it and she sees either judgments or not judgment, or it's clean. Most of the time, a buyer, they don't know how to read a preliminary title report. Like you were saying, it's 7 or 8 pages. They usually call and say, do I have to pay this as extra? What's this number up here? But one of the things that I love about Robin is when she puts in the email, the taxes are blank, they're unpaid, and then she'll, seller will pay at closing, because most of the buyers will be like, do I have to pay for that? What is this? How does this read on the prelim? Are these extra charges for me? Oh, I didn't, so just reviewing that preliminary title report with them, and then sending it to them by email to say, this is what it says, this is what's going to be paid at closing. And if you have any questions, let me know. As we have in our file, you have 5 business days to review it. So I kind of have a template of an email that gets sent out. But being in title and escrow before, I know how important the preliminary title report is. And the report is basically everything. It's how the buyer and seller are vested in the property. So that's kind of one of the main points in the transaction.
Yeah. So I did want to make sure that we did a quick touch on the prelims. Get in touch with your escrow officers, get more aware of them, make it a part of your routine to review those, send them out to your clients. Hopefully you don't run into any issues. And if you do, your escrow officer is helping you through them earlier on in a process, and it doesn't delay any closing. So really, I'd like to wrap this up by thanking everybody on the panel for being here, sharing all of your experience, your tips, and everything to the agents who have taken time to be here today to learn more and to level up their business. If there are any questions, this would be a great time with our panelists to have those before our time ends. Does anybody have any questions? I haven't been watching the chat. So Robin, thank you so much for your time today. I think we lost Derek, because I don't see him. Is Derek still here?
Derek had to bounce about 15 minutes ago.
Yeah, I thought so. He ended up probably needing to get over to that signing, which is absolutely A-okay. But thank you so much for all of your time and experience that you've shared with us today. And thank you everybody who's attended. If anybody has any questions continuing from this, please reach out to me or Robin Sullivan, and we'd be happy to. I think there were some people who are interested in that template on that broker escrow instructions. So thank you so much.